welcome everyone to this really important and special conversation on behalf of the fourth floor. Today's topic, this is all about how women can leverage the power of LinkedIn to establish thought leadership, network, intention, and attract professional opportunities. And we have a special guest who is with us here today from LinkedIn, and that is Tamina Stoll. But before we dive in and I introduce her and hand the stage over to her, just a very brief word about the fourth floor for those of you that don't already know. We are a marketplace and we match startups and companies to board-ready women. We do this in a very efficient and cost-effective way. Our intent is to disrupt the traditional board search process and overcome systemic barriers that have kept women out of the board candidate pipeline historically. We also match underrepresented founders and fund managers with women angels and LPs in our backroom private investment club. So this is the call to action part. If you are listening to this and you are a founder of a startup, consider joining us so you can tap into the incredible talent pool of 1,500 plus board-ready women, so you can find really talented advisors, mentors, directors, and observers, build out and leverage your advisory and governing boards in our board seat exchange. You can also seek funding in our back room if you are women or BIPOC-led in your early stage. And of course, you benefit from powerful peer network of 800 other startup founders, as well as all of the candidates and their networks as well. Board-ready women, if you are listening to this and you are not a founder, but you are an executive, you are someone who's at a point in your career where you would like to land your first or maybe your third for-profit board opportunity, and or you might be interested in angel or LP investing, please consider joining us. So the best way to do that, you can apply to join us on our website. We put the link in the chat. You can also come to a platform tour. We do them every Monday at noon. It's a great way to hear more about the backstory of why we built the fourth floor, what we're accomplishing. You can see inside, understand whether or not it's for you. So really recommend you come to a platform tour. We can also onboard you directly from that tour if you meet our qualifications and you want to skip the application process. So I guess the last thing I would say is if you are listening to this and you are an executive at a company and you think your company might be interested in making membership in the fourth floor a powerful professional development benefit for women executives, we would love to talk to you. So we have a deck to share. We would love to be a resource for your corporate employer for if and when that employer is looking to add directors, observers, or advisors to a corporate advisory board. We also have a job board. So, and of course, we're a great professional development resource. So enough about me, enough about the fourth floor. Let's get to the point of today. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the spotlight Tamina Stoll. She is a LinkedIn marketing client executive and a global women at LinkedIn comms team lead. Tamina also has a fantastic podcast. Kat and I had the absolute pleasure to be guests on her podcast. And Tamina is one of those people that has her fingers in a million pots and is doing amazing things. So I am going to hand the stage over to you now, Tamina, and let you more fully introduce yourself and take the stage.
Amazing. Thank you so much for those kind words, Breen. Thank you to you and thank you to Kat for having me. It's an honor and I'm so excited to have the opportunity to have this wonderful hour with you all today. As we mentioned before, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We're probably gonna leave them until the end to make sure that we don't get too repetitive. And yes, please do feel free to reach out after today if you have any follow-up questions. More than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn because that's what we're here for today. So let's dive in. As Breen was mentioning, I wear many different hats. I am very unapologetic about fully embracing what I call a multi-hyphenate career. As Breen was mentioning, I work at LinkedIn full-time, where I'm a member of our strategic accounts team, where I support a Fortune 30 client with their digital marketing strategy on our platform for optimized corporate reputation, employer branding, and customer acquisition. On top of that, I'm am part of the Global Women at LinkedIn leadership team, actually transitioning into a new role as starting July, becoming our external network lead. So if you're working for an organization that would like to partner with women at LinkedIn in the future, feel free to reach out to me. I'm also a board member, angel investor, startup advisor. I'm part of the Duke New York Women's Forum Executive Committee, very involved with my alma mater. I'm also very passionate about women's financial health. So as Breen was mentioning, I'm the host of a podcast called Give Her Dollars, which sits at the intersection of personal finance education, venture capital, angel investing, and entrepreneurship. So I've had the honor of interviewing a bunch of wonderful, wonderful women in this space. I'm also very passionate about women's health and women's fertility preservation after having been diagnosed with a chronic illness called lipedema in 2021 and being diagnosed with premature fertility decline last fall. So I'm actually currently, as we speak, going through my second run of egg freezing. So that's a lot of fun. And in a past life, I was pursuing a career in sports journalism. So I had the opportunity to work for two of the biggest brands in soccer, Bayern Munich, which is my hometown team. I'm from Munich, Germany originally, and I also had the opportunity to work for the Bundesliga, which is Germany's equivalent of the MLS. And if you scan that QR code here, and that will take you directly to my LinkedIn profile so you can connect with me afterwards. All right. Before we talk about how we can optimize your LinkedIn profiles, how you can be comfortable sharing content on LinkedIn and become a pro network on our platform, I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to talk a little bit about LinkedIn as a platform and digital environment from a more holistic perspective. As you can see, we're close to hitting the magic 1 billion member mark. I'm sure we're going to hit that by the end of 2023, which is really exciting. When I joined LinkedIn as an employee in 2018, I think we just reached the 500 or 600 million member mark. So super, super exciting. Interestingly enough, Gen Z is actually the fastest growing demographic on our platform. So there is lots of opportunity to engage with young talent on our platform. 98% of all Fortune 500 companies actually leverage our platform and our tools, our flagship tools called LinkedIn Recruiter, which hiring managers and recruiters use to source talent. Interestingly enough, from an impact perspective, LinkedIn members submit 117 job applications every single second. Some of you might also be familiar with our digital learning platform called LinkedIn Learning, where we have thousands and thousands of courses ranging from creative topics, business topics, technical topics, and there's about 60 new courses being added to our LinkedIn Learning platform every single week. You can also see that an increasing amount of members are actually becoming active as content creators and thought leaders on our platform as well, with a 22% increase in public content being shared on the platform since last year. We actually also have, and I think that is something that a lot of people probably don't know about LinkedIn, we have an entire LinkedIn editorial team that consists of very smart and accomplished and talented journalists who make sure that we can have really great conversations ranging from, business to, the future of talent, the future of workforce, and everything that we might want to talk about on our platform. They oftentimes contribute to newsletter conversations. They interview leaders in business. They collaborate with our LinkedIn top voices. I'm sure you've seen those like blue badges on specific members' profiles before. So that's all managed by our LinkedIn editorial team. They also manage our community management team, and they're in charge of supporting our LinkedIn top voices and their content. And during the pandemic, we also launched a new feature, LinkedIn newsletters. We have more than 90,000 newsletters on the platform. So as you can see, LinkedIn has evolved so much over the years. It is not just a place where you go if you're looking for a new job. It's really the closest thing that we have to a digital representation of the world's economy. So I want you to keep that in mind as we continue our conversation today. And I always like to say to people who are like, I enjoy Instagram or TikTok or Twitter more, and like, fair enough, I'm active on all of these platforms as well. But I always like to say that if you actually don't enjoy spending time on LinkedIn, that's kind of your own fault, because there's actually so much goodness happening on LinkedIn, specifically really, really great content that exceptional women leaders and thought leaders are sharing on our platform on a daily basis. I mean, there's just a couple of examples of some of my favorite people that I like to follow, very well-known people, including Melinda French Gates, Sally Krawcheck, but also some of the people within my community, Megan Loyst, who is the founder of Gen Z VCs, for example, and a 2-time Forbes 30 under 30 honoree. Mina Black, who I had the opportunity to interview a few weeks ago, who is the founder of the Rainmakers Collective, and just some really, really incredible women. And if you open your LinkedIn app and you start following these incredible women, this is really an opportunity for you to create your LinkedIn feed the way you want it, log in and really, really be inspired by all the great information that these individuals share on a daily basis with their LinkedIn community. But let's look at some numbers. And what you can see here is a screenshot from my own personal analytics section, because I really want you to realize that if you are a business owner, for example, or if you were an executive for a well-known company, LinkedIn is a great opportunity for you to put yourself out there, to connect with potential customers, with potential business partners, and really attract professional opportunities. So as you can see here, and I have like sub 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, right? But nevertheless, I'm able to generate on average more than 100,000 views every single month that I'm on the platform. I usually post about 2 to 3 times a week on average, I would say. So this is getting me those numbers. And every single month, there's more than 1,000 people checking out my LinkedIn profile, which means they probably saw one of my posts on the feed, clicked on my profile, and started scrolling and see what I'm up to on a regular basis, right? So I want you to start thinking about, what could 100,000 views every month on your content mean for you and your business? I don't know what your conversion rates look like, but that could mean potentially like 100 new clients or 10 new clients, depending on the context of your unique circumstances. So hopefully this serves as a call to action for you to really start being active on LinkedIn. And I think something that really differentiates LinkedIn from other social media platforms is that when people open their LinkedIn app or go to linkedin.com on their computers, they really have the intention to be inspired, learn, and grow. It's not a passive scroll the way it is maybe on other social media platforms. It's very much a mindset of, okay, I'm in a business mindset. I want to learn, I want to be inspired, and I want to consume content that helps me either stay up to date with my network, stay up to date with industry news, or learn something, find resources that help me be better in my profession or in my job. I would love for you all to open a new window on your computer, or either on your phone, whatever is most convenient. And I would love for you all to go to linkedin.com/sales/SSI, because I want you all to walk away today knowing what the current snapshot of your LinkedIn presence is. And the best way to really quantify that is through the social selling index. And would love for you all, I'm going to give you all a couple of moments to figure that all out, but would love for you all to drop the number that you see in the chat and see who gets the highest number here. Again, this is linkedin.com/sales/SSI. Okay, we have the first number coming in, 66, not bad. Okay. Top 1%.
Sorry, Tamina, which number are you referring to? Oh, the social selling index.
The social selling index. Yes. 48, 67, amazing. 61, 63. Well, top percent is fantastic. 58, 39, 65. Bridget, do you have a 95? Really? Amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a 95 before. That's super, super impressive. You must be a very, very active LinkedIn user. 57, 54, 87. Amazing. So I think those baseline numbers are pretty incredible. If you compare yourself to the people in your industry, some of you already put in the chat that they're in the top 1%. That's really all that we're looking for, right? I have an 80, I believe. Yes, so that's where I'm at. And you can see here the 4 components that make up your score. So you can see, okay, I'm pretty good at building a relationship and connecting with awesome women, some of the women who are on this call today, right? But I can probably improve a little bit by engaging with insights, sharing more insights about my profession, you know, what I'm up to at LinkedIn, and improve my social selling index that way. So for those people who might have a bit of a lower baseline, again, I think for all of us, since we're all very accomplished women, I think the baseline is pretty high. I've seen, you know, lower numbers in the past. So the bar is really high here, but maybe write down that number now if you're maybe in your 40s or 50s or 60s. And then once you start implementing some of the recommendations I'm going to share with you all today, hopefully in a couple of weeks or months from now, you can look back at that social selling index number that you wrote down today, and hopefully you will have seen some sort of an increase over time. Okay. All right, let's talk about optimizing your LinkedIn profile. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but what I will talk about are some of the most common mistakes I see people make. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is that they don't take full advantage of the top section of their LinkedIn profile. When people see your content on the LinkedIn feed and they actually decide to click on your LinkedIn profile to learn more about you, you probably maybe have like a second, if at all, that determines whether or not that person is going to continue to scroll down and then potentially read your about section and check out, you know, your professional experiences. So I really encourage you all to take full advantage of that 1 second that you have and maximize the prime real estate that this top section is actually giving you. So what that means is like, definitely upload a branded cover photo. I think that is one of the biggest mistakes I see very well-established people make. This is, again, prime real estate. So use the opportunity to advertise your business or the company that you work for, and make sure that it's easy for people to see what it is that you do and how you add value. There's a question in the chat, personal brand or corporate brand. It kind of depends. So as you can see, for me, I work for a corporation, LinkedIn, right? But I made a conscious decision to promote my own personal brand, specifically my podcast that I launched this past March, right? So that is totally up to you. If you are a senior executive in corporate America, maybe it might more sense to promote the company that you work for because you're a very visible senior representative of that company. But if you are your own boss, then promote your own business, right? Something that I also recommend, if you feel comfortable doing that, profile pictures that have some sort of a colorful background, they really do pop on the feed, especially since the profile picture icons, when you scroll on the feed, they're rather small, right? So whenever I scroll and see someone that has a very, very colorful picture, I usually stop scrolling, and that's exactly the kind of effect that you want, right? And then the headline, as you can see, I took up almost 3.5 lines of headline space here. A lot of people oftentimes only put down their job title, and that's perfectly fine. But I think you could really do a better job at maximizing the space that you have available. It's like an elevator pitch that you should put down in your headline. And there's different approaches. You know, if you feel like you have to put down your job title, that's perfectly fine, especially if you're in a senior leadership role. Other people put down half sentences or entire sentences. Like, for example, I help companies with their digital transformation by doing X, Y, or I'm helping 75,000 women get on boards by 2025, for example. So that's really up to you. But as someone who has, as I mentioned before, a very multi-hyphenate portfolio career, I just put a bunch of keywords in there and some things that add a certain level of credibility there. For example, the 100 Women of 2022 recognition, because again, that hopefully encourages people to keep scrolling and eventually connect with me and maybe reach out to me to invite me to speak at their companies or, book me for some sort of event. Here are a couple of examples of people that do that really, really nicely. Bose, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with her. She's the former CMO of Netflix. Absolutely love the popping that you can see. Tijen Onaran, she's one of my friends and mentors. She's one of the biggest thought leaders, specifically in the diversity space in Germany, where I'm from. And Amelia is a personal branding expert. I think she's based in the UK. So those three women have done a really, really good job with branding their profile pictures. And on the right-hand side, you can see a couple of good examples of people taking full advantage of the space that they have with their cover photos. Sanyan Siang, who is a LinkedIn top voice with more than 1 million followers and a good friend and mentor of mine. She decided to promote one of the recognitions that she received, like top 50 coach in the world, right? She has a book, the launch book that she's promoting, and she's also been named LinkedIn top voice a couple of years. Then there's Basan Shinoda, who is a friend and co-worker of mine, who is also embracing the multi-hyphenate career. She shares a lot of content around finding a job in tech, overcoming job search challenges, and really leaning into her cultural heritage as a woman being from Egypt and having dealt with a lot of challenges in regards to immigration. And then Mandy, who is a former coworker of mine, has this remote work community that she's built with like tens and thousands of people on LinkedIn. So that's what she's promoting. So when we scroll down and go beyond the top section, 2 other callouts I want to make. You have the opportunity to actually feature external content or even your own well-performing LinkedIn posts. That adds a little bit more of credibility to your LinkedIn profile, makes it a little bit more engaging and dynamic as well. So if you have been mentioned in the media, for example, I would definitely put that in the featured section. I put my podcast links there, for example, or as you can see with Basan's examples here, she decided to highlight some of the best performing content that went viral. So that's totally up to you, can be a mix of both, but definitely encourage you all to take advantage of that. And then the about section is really an opportunity for you to tie all of the different pieces of your professional and personal identity together to craft a well-rounded narrative. And I always encourage people to not just talk only about their professional identity, but also add a bit of a human touch to it. Like, I love it when leaders talk about like their dogs, or that they love, certain types of exercises, doing marathons, for example, or if they talk about their kids. I think sometimes we forget that people want to do business with people, not with robots. And when I read someone's bio and it's just like very, very formal and it's in third person, then it's oftentimes a little bit, okay, do I actually want to engage with this person? Not that it's like a huge issue, but I always find it more welcoming when people write their about sections on LinkedIn from a first person perspective. So something for you to think about. Let's talk a little bit about thought leadership through content creation. When people come to LinkedIn, I was already talking about that a little bit earlier. Aside from looking for a job, they really want to be inspired. They want to learn from role models and thought leaders. Obviously, they want to build their networks. So definitely take advantage of that. But then also people are looking for resources, industry news, anything that can really help them be better at their jobs. So always think about that as you're thinking about, okay, how can I position myself on LinkedIn as a thought leader, and how can I start creating very effective content? And I'm sharing a couple of great examples of people who are doing this really well and in different contexts. So again, my friend and coworker Basen Shinoda, you can see here more than 12,000 people engaged with this content. So very, very powerful, definitely went viral. So she's someone who's not afraid to show up very vulnerably on the platform, talk about her failures, what she's learned from them, how she's consistently overcome challenges as an immigrant woman in her 20s. So the type of content that she shares is very inspirational, it's very authentic, and you just like know what you get. So I love that about Basen specifically. Here we have another example of Megan Loist. Megan Loist, again, she is the founder and CEO of Gen Z VCs, Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, who used to work in VC, but turned herself and her own business full-time at the end of 2022. And she shared this, I think, like just a few weeks ago. What Megan is really good at is she is really good at writing very thorough analyses of what she's seeing, what is happening in the world of business, specifically in the digital space. So she did this fantastic analysis of digital communities and why she believes that building a paid community is the fastest way for entrepreneurs, specifically solopreneurs, to get to $1 million in revenue these days. And she grouped different types of communities and put that out. And yeah, again, went viral, over 2,300 engagements there. So also a great example of someone who is leveraging their own expertise, providing industry insights, but addressing current trends and just putting content out there that is very, very informative. And then lastly, Ellie K. Miller. She also has over 1 million followers on LinkedIn, is a top voice. She is an expert for AI. She used to lead the AI initiatives over at AWS, Amazon Web Services, and left the company a couple of months ago to go full-time on herself as well, which I think is fantastic. And obviously, she picked a really, really great time to go full-time on herself. You know, when ChatGPT officially launched publicly in November, she took full advantage of that and further established herself as a thought leader in the space by putting out lots of really, really informative content, AI and machine learning guides, how-tos. So she's really great at addressing trending topics and weighing in with her industry expertise. So I would generally put different types of LinkedIn content into 4 buckets. So we have the behind the scenes of running a business. That is always something that I think is really, really exciting, especially for some of you who are more established in your careers. I think younger women would really appreciate learning from you what it's like to run your own business, or if you work in corporate, what it took for you to climb the corporate ladder and some of the challenges you've had to overcome. Addressing industry trends and observations, I think that is always a great way for you to establish yourself as a thought leader, potentially even attract press features, media opportunities. Digital mentorship. So how can you share your wisdom in a form of really snackable and actionable and very tangible content? Again, Ellie K. Miller is a great example of creating how-to guides and sharing very, very tangible advice, but then also inspiring personal stories. Again, Basen was a really, really great example of really leaning into vulnerability. I think one of the very few positive outcomes of the pandemic is that we're all starting to realize, mental health is kind of important, and I need to lean in more into my authenticity and vulnerability in order to be a more empathetic and more compassionate leader. And I would love for you to translate all of the experience that you have, all of the inspirational stories that you're able to tell into LinkedIn stories that you can share on the platform. Because I always like to say, if me speaking up, and I've had my fair share of challenges, ranging from depression and chronic illness and premature fertility decline, right? Like I always like to say, if me speaking up and leveraging my voice and my platform is helping just one woman be inspired and put herself in a position where she can make more informed decisions about her career or her own body or her money, then that's already worth it. It's probably a bit of a muscle that, you know, you need to train over time. I certainly didn't find my voice on LinkedIn overnight, but just leverage today as an official invitation for you to start thinking about how you can show up in the most authentic and vulnerable way on LinkedIn. So here are a couple of examples of types of content that I would put on LinkedIn if I owned a PR agency, for example. So it could be a day in a life, sharing some client success stories. So that's that, like adding credibility. What's the behind the scenes of writing a press release? What happens if there is a crisis for one of my clients? How do I navigate that? Then leaning more into industry trends. Okay, how does PR leverage, you know, ChatGPT and AI tools, the rise of influencer marketing? You know, how do you deal with TikTok shitstorms, right? If you want to share more tangible advice, you could share a PR pitching guide, or how do you build relationships with the media so you can get your name and your business out there? How can you craft an effective press release? And then from an inspirational stories perspective, you know, how I quit my 9-to-5 to pursue my dream of being my own business owner, for example, failures and challenges that you've had to overcome. Again, I share about fertility challenges, for example, but I know that the topic of postpartum depression is something that I see a lot more people talk about more on Instagram specifically, but would love for more people to also talk about those types of things on LinkedIn. Menopause is finally something that more and more people start to talk about, but I think specifically on LinkedIn, that's such a great topic to address because it has serious implications for women who are in the workforce. And we want to make sure that we can raise awareness among all employees, no matter their gender, right? So we can create a more empathetic and compassionate workforce and ultimately make progress together as one society where nobody feels left behind. Control the narrative. I want to take a step back and share a story. I already told you about, you know, the premature fertility decline that was diagnosed for me last fall when I went through my first round of egg freezing. You know, I knew my employer was going to cover it, so I was just like, okay, let me just do all the tests and start the process. And I thought this would be a one done kind of thing. Unfortunately, that was not the case. So it took me some time to, and I'm still healing, to be quite frank with you all. But I decided to talk about it. And the more I started thinking about why I should talk about it, I really started to also reflect on, okay, what could that mean for my own professional future? And right now I work in corporate America for LinkedIn, right? But at some point, I want to become more active in the venture capital and angel space. May that be through either, you know, joining a VC fund as an LP, or starting my own fund in the future, or just being very, very active angel investor. I haven't figured out the details just yet, but that's where I see my future is headed, right? That's how I see myself having an impact moving forward. And something that I'm particularly passionate about is women's health. As I was mentioning, I was diagnosed with a chronic illness in 2021. And then, you know, the whole fertility challenges topic came on top of that. So when I think about where I would want to put my money in the future, the space of women's health and femtech is definitely an area where I can see myself adding massive value. So I put this post out there on LinkedIn, not expecting that it would go semi-viral. Countless women from all over the world started reaching out to me, thanking me for my transparency and telling me that they were either going through similar challenges or that they had been considering starting the egg freezing process or getting their fertility checked. But now that they saw my post, they actually end up scheduling like a fertility assessment the following week. Like those messages alone, receiving those on LinkedIn, that was so rewarding, but it didn't stop there. A few days later, the CMO of a well-known fertility clinic that has clinics all over the country reached out to me asking to get on a call with me. And we had a good conversation. She was like, hey, would you be interested in, paid collaboration opportunities in the future? Yes, sure. Then she also put me in contact with the head of fertility preservation of her fertility clinic, who happens to be one of the world's most accomplished fertility doctor in the world. A lot of the academic research and the papers that she's put out there has really shaped the industry. So I had an opportunity to have her be on my podcast. Fast forward a couple of more weeks later, I connected with the co-founders of a fertility preservation startup called Blooming Eve. They want to make egg freezing and soon also IVF more accessible and guide people with ovaries through that process. And I ended up becoming their advisor and early investor. And all of that happened within like 3 or 4 months. And now I'm a lot closer to achieving my goal of having an impact in the femtech and women's health space as an investor and startup advisor. So the reason why I'm bringing this up today is because when you think about where you want to go, try to reverse engineer the steps, what it takes to get there, to build a personal brand in a certain niche, right? So what I mean by that is when you start talking about a specific topic, egg freezing, for example, you want the people in your community, in your environment to think of you first. I am not a medical professional. I am not the only woman who is suffering from infertility or even from a chronic disease, right? There's thousands and millions of women who are suffering from that. What sets me apart from a lot of these women is that I start talking about it. And I create and hold space for us as a society to have much needed conversations around that topic. So whenever someone in my community now is talking about egg freezing, my name comes to mind immediately, and then they connect me to other opportunities. So start thinking about the types of topics that you want to be known for and start crafting narratives and LinkedIn posts around that and put that out there in the world. Not every single post might go viral or semi-viral, but you won't find out until you give it a try, right? So really encourage you all to do that. Oftentimes people ask me, okay, but how do I actually write a good LinkedIn post? And to be quite honest with you all, I'm still trying to figure that out. It's a trial and error. Sometimes posts go viral or get a lot of engagements. I didn't expect it at all. And then I spend, hours meticulously crafting a post, and it gets like 10 engagements or something. I don't know how the algorithm works most of the time, but again, it's trial and error, but something that I've certainly observed and studying some of my own friends and mentors and some of the LinkedIn top voices. The IDA model is something that I've come across very frequently. And again, Megan's post around paid membership communities is a great example of that. What I always encourage people to do is start with a hook, so you can really grab people's attention, right? And like if you have, okay, the fastest way to get to $1 million, okay, I want to know how I can get to $1 million, right? So really, really great use of the attention here. Second, grabbing people's interest. Okay, I have their attention now. Now I want to make sure that they actually keep reading. So she starts writing about a recent event that this guy called Sam launched a new paid membership community last week. He's a fairly well-known and accomplished entrepreneur. Okay, then I also see the name Chief there. All right, Chief. Most people are probably familiar with that community at that point. Okay, now everyone is hooked, have their attention, they're going to keep reading, but now they want to learn even more. So then Megan goes into more detail about, okay, what's the history of communities? What's the trend behind it? What are the opportunities there? And then towards the end, it's like, oh, by the way, I actually wrote a very, very thoughtful newsletter post about this whole topic that goes into a lot more detail. Here's how you can sign up. So always encourage you all to follow this model and make sure that there's some sort of like a call to action in the end, especially if you have a business, product, or services that you want to promote. Here are a couple of content best practices. If you're new to all of this, don't be too stressed. I don't want you to feel anxious whatsoever. Start out with posting once a week, and then slowly over time work yourself up to 2 to 3 times a week. I think that is definitely doable. You don't have to be on there every single day, but 2 to 3 times per week seems to be really, really good for the algorithm. Also consider when your specific audience and community, when are they most active on LinkedIn? Is it on their commute to work if they're still commuting, or is it right before they log in? Is it during their lunch break? Is it right after they're done with work? For me, I always have to consider, time zones, because I am from Europe and I started my LinkedIn journey in Dublin, Ireland. So I have a bunch of connections and community members who are based in EMEA, right? So that's why I usually tend to post around like noon, lunchtime, sometimes maybe like 4 p.m., 4:30. So that's then like 10:30 p.m. in Germany, for example. But that's unique to you. Definitely recommend that you include a couple of hashtags. You can look up a couple of hashtags ahead of time. Type them into the search bar. For example, one that I love using is women supporting women, or DEI, or gender equality. And when you type them in, you can see how many people are following that hashtag. Yes, you can follow hashtags on LinkedIn. And I definitely try to have like a good amount of like 3 to 10 hashtags in my posts at all times. Something that is really helpful for the algorithm to make sure that your post is being pushed to more and more people over time is that you actually engage with your community after you post it. So what I mean by that is that you reply to the comments that people leave under your post. Try to do that as quickly as possible, but also in a thoughtful way. Not just emoji or a thank you, but maybe if there is an additional thought that you can add there, I think that is really beneficial. And then would also encourage you to keep engaging on the platform in general beyond your own post for a couple of minutes afterwards. Keep scrolling, keep liking, keep leaving thoughtful comments on other people's posts, because apparently that seems to be helpful for the algorithm. All right, networking with intention. I know all of you probably have already a very, very well-established network, so you're probably pros at this. But I wanted to share a couple of insights and tips and tricks that I found to be really valuable as I continue to establish my network. For me, that's really important because, first of all, I am from abroad, right? So I don't have, family or family friends that I can be introduced to. So when I moved to the States for the first time for undergrad, I really had to build my profile from scratch, my network from scratch with the help of my LinkedIn presence. So have a couple of years of experience leveraging this platform specifically for networking purposes. And I found it really interesting, and that certainly held true for me, and you can reflect on whether that's the case for you or not. But I've personally found that it's oftentimes not my first degree connection. So like people that are already in my network, friends, family, classmates, but it's oftentimes their friends and family members and their community members and people in their network who end up being the most helpful in order for me to attract new professional opportunities. And I have an example here. My first degree connection, the lovely lady in yellow with the blonde hair, her name is Miriam. We used to work for the same radio station back in Munich. We've been connected for quite some time. And she's friends with the lady in blue that I was briefly mentioning earlier. Her name is Tijen. And Tijen is based in Germany, right? But she came over to New York a couple of months ago, last fall, to attend the Bill and Melinda Gates conference on the Global Sustainable Goals because she was invited as a guest there. And I'd been following Tijen for quite some time. As I was mentioning earlier, she is one of the most well-known women in all of Germany, one of the most successful entrepreneurs and investors. So she'd been a role model of mine from afar for quite some time. And then when I saw her that she announced that she was going to be in New York, I reached out to our mutual connection, Miriam, was like, hey, I know Tijen is probably super, super busy. But if there's any chance that she might want to stop by the LinkedIn office and have like coffee, lunch, would love the opportunity. Miriam ended up introducing us. Tijen and her husband, Marco, ended up coming to a LinkedIn office. We had a great time. We spent like a couple of hours together, discovered that we have many, many mutual interest and started developing a relationship from there. She's become a mentor ever since. And she actually recently asked me to join the advisory board of her diversity consulting firm, which is one of the biggest diversity firms in all of Europe. So, and that just goes to show that there's so much value in you actually taking full advantage of your second and third degree connections. The third degree connection that you can see here, the lovely lady with the glasses, her name is Kirsten. She's a very, very senior executive at one of the biggest companies in Germany. I met her at Tijen's New Year's Eve party back home in Germany when I was back home over winter break, and we ended up developing a friendship, and she's become a mentor ever since. And the more people you are adding to your network on LinkedIn, you know, the more first degree connections you have, the more possibility there is for you to actually connect with potentially beneficial second and third degree connections. So definitely encourage you all to take advantage of that. And then there is an approach that I call digital courtship. I brought up Megan Loist a couple of times already because she's just been killing the LinkedIn game over the past couple of months. She is also LinkedIn top voice. Megan is one of those people that I really look up to because she's just accomplished so much, and she's a couple of years younger than me. I think she's like 24, 25. I'm 28. So I discovered her work at the end of 2021, early 2022. And my goal was like, I want to meet her at some point, especially after having moved to New York, and she's based in New York as well. I was like, okay, now I'm here. I've been following her content online for quite some time. I want to meet her. But how do I do that? You cannot just like cold outreach someone who is already this established. So what I ended up doing is I started commenting on her LinkedIn posts over you know, the spring, summer of last year, not just like, oh, love this, but like left like thoughtful comments, right? Started resharing some of her stuff. Then she shared one day last fall that she was hosting an in-person community event for community Gen Z VCs in New York, happened to be just a couple of blocks away from the LinkedIn office in the Empire State Building. So I was like, okay, might as well Friday afternoon pop in. Finally met her in person. I introduced myself to her and she's like, oh, you're my LinkedIn friend, right? I was like, oh, she actually knows who I am. That's fantastic. So we hadn't established a formal relationship back then, but I was like, okay, at least, you know, I'm somewhat on her radar there. Let me keep going. Let me keep nurturing that potential relationship. Then she launched like 2 months or so later a newsletter and announced that she was gonna launch also a Maven course on venture capital the following January. So this is January of 2023. So enroll in her course, attend the course, which is like over the course of 6 or 8 weeks. Start sharing, you know, pictures of me taking the course on Instagram, tag her, she reshares it. It's another way for me to get on her radar, right? And then I end up referring a bunch of people to her newsletter, and she can see that due to a customized unique link who's referring people to her newsletter. And I ended up being the top referrer for a newsletter. So then we finally got on a one-on-one call this past March. She shared a couple of recommendations for me on how I can up my content game on LinkedIn. And she basically offered to be my mentor and supporter moving on. So that just goes to show that there is a true opportunity for you all to engage and connect with people that you might believe today might be unreachable because they're already so established and so successful. But hopefully I've proven to you today that it is actually possible by leveraging the power of LinkedIn to actually engage in these types of digital courtship opportunities. I'm not encouraging you all to be stalkers by any means. Be thoughtful about it, be mindful about it. But I think we are all very much embracing the notion of the importance of women supporting women. And when you actually go out of your way, invest the time and energy to promote other women's works, they will start noticing. I'm sure this has happened to you all multiple times, and you can probably think to a couple of instances where you were really grateful for someone else showing up for you. So this is a great opportunity to do so. All right. This is what I encourage you to do. If you're trying to get a hold of someone that you really admire, definitely recommend that you start commenting on their LinkedIn posts over the course of a couple of weeks. Then maybe after a month or two, whenever you feel like, okay, I think they know who I am. They've seen my profile picture and my name a couple of times, specifically after they also start engaging with some of your contents, maybe comments 2 or 3 times. That's when you hit them with the personalized connection invite. Make sure that you personalize it and not just send a request and then like nothing happens, right? And then you can kind of decide, okay, do I feel comfortable making an ask right away? Or should I just say like, hey, been following your journey for quite some time. You've been so inspiring for XY reasons. If there's ever anything I can do to support you, let me know and see what happens. Or maybe you're brave enough to already ask for, 30 minutes of their time for a Zoom call right away, and take it from there. This has been working really, really well for me personally. It has been working really well for some of the people that I mentor and coach now. So definitely recommend that approach. I know we only have about 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we leave some time for questions as well. But quick summary. LinkedIn is more than just a job search platform these days. It's really the closest thing we have to a digital representation of the world's global economy. If you don't enjoy spending time on LinkedIn just yet, that's kind of your fault. And I encourage you all to start curating your feed to your liking so you actually feel inspired and you actually feel like you learned something when you scroll on LinkedIn. Optimize your LinkedIn profile by definitely maximizing the prime real estate you have in the top section of your LinkedIn profile. Don't be afraid to show up vulnerably. Again, people want to do business with people, not with robots. Add value to your community, share your experiences, and then make sure that you focus on building relationships with your second and third degree connections, and potentially engage in digital courtship in a very intentional and thoughtful way. And on that note, I'm gonna end the presentation. Again, feel free to connect with me if you haven't already, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we can jump into all the questions.
Wow, amazing, Tamina. This has been super helpful. And I think you got a lot of support there in the chat, a lot of people agreeing with your strategies and thesis. So really exciting. Because we don't have a lot of time, let's do some quick fire questions. So the first one, what are your feelings about accepting invites from people who you have not met in person?
Oh, that's such a good question. I get this all the time. Right now, I have over 500 pending connection requests that I probably will not accept because majority of the people didn't even put in the effort to write a personalized invite. Like, unless someone is coming from an environment or community that I'm already sort of a part of or familiar with, that's kind of like the minimum, writing a personalized invite and letting me know why they want to be connected, because they really been, I've worked really hard to build an impressive network, right? And if someone just like comes in and then takes advantage of my second and third degree connections, I need them to be able to add value to me as well. So if it's someone that is in my industry, I might not have to know them, but if we have a certain number of mutual connections, if I have at least one mutual connection with someone, I at least check out their LinkedIn profile and then kind of make a quick judgment call there. If I have more mutual connections, then usually I accept. And certainly if they're a member of, one of my communities, went to my school or used to work for the same company, or their personalized invite is very thoughtful, then I tend to accept. That's my approach.
Excellent. Okay, great. And so are emojis acceptable in LinkedIn? What about links out to your website or to your YouTube?
Yes, yes, and yes. Emojis, I started experimenting with emojis on my LinkedIn post, and it's just, I do it for visual purposes because just like having a bunch of sentences without any additional visual cues, I find it tough to, grab people's attention without including emojis. Don't do like an emoji overkill, but I think a couple of emojis, like maybe 4 or 5, or if you do the more neutral ones, like the check marks, for example, or like bullet point type of emojis, I think that's perfectly fine and actually helps people read your content in a more visually pleasing way.
Okay, great. Okay, so one question is there a way to search for those that are ranked or that have the score of 95 within a certain industry?
No, you cannot search people based on their social selling index. That's unfortunately not possible.
Okay. The next question is about hashtags. You mentioned 3 to 10. I think if you Google it, it mentions 3, but what is your feeling? Is there a sweet spot as far as exactly how many, or is it really just within that range?
I would say within that range. It depends on the specific content of the post, right? I usually do at least 3, but no overkill, maybe not 15 or 20. I mean, people have a lot of thoughts about any social media platform and what works and what doesn't. If I feel like a hashtag is relevant and I already have more than 3, throw it in there, especially if it has a good amount of followers already. Might as well.
Great. Okay. And then your opinion on what is personal. Can it be too personal?
I mean, look, every now and then you will get comments from people like, hey, this is not Facebook. I actually haven't received that many comments. I only remember like maybe 1 or 2 over the past year. I think if you can spin it and make it relevant to, your professional identity, to the workplace, career, I think almost nothing is off limits. Like I've seen people talk about fertility or infertility specifically on LinkedIn, and their posts have gotten insane engagement and lots of supportive comments as well. Never forget that people are actually posting with their real names on LinkedIn as opposed to on other platforms where they can hide between fake handles, right? And if you leave a very hurtful or non-productive comment on someone's post, that is ultimately a bad reflection on you and not the person who is so brave to open up and share vulnerably.
Amazing. And I think now we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much. This was so incredibly helpful and inspiring and exciting. So thank you, Tamina, and thank you everyone for joining us.